Okay, I see people comment, so I'm going to release the broadcast now.
Sure.
Okay. So, welcome to Keynotion's Health Innovation World. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're very honored to have Mr. Martin van Middelkoop joining us and taking time off to show us and walk us through an exciting time of technology on using dashboards and showing us what we are now very interested in, all things virtual. So, Mr. van Middelkoop, it would be great if you could introduce yourself briefly, and the floor is yours now.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I am Martin van Middelkoop. It is a very Dutch name, so that's also where I live. I live in the Netherlands, near Rotterdam. And I am well, implementation manager, which is to say a project manager for software that we offer from Roche and GE, responsible for the Netherlands and Sweden, but also sometimes working for other countries in EMEA, LATAM. So that's a short story. I have a technical background, but I grew from the IT space much more into healthcare. So I work in the combination of IT and healthcare for about 20 years now. So that's where I'm coming from. So today I changed the title a little bit, so a bit shorter, why doctors will soon be using clinical decision support applications as their primary system. That is the title of this talk, and let me walk you through the agenda shortly as well. So I have three topics that I would like to talk about. The first thing is more the introduction. So what is the state of affairs nowadays? So how do physicians work and need to work in current days? That's the first part, introducing actually the second and the third part. Because I think in these days we need new kind of systems to enable doctors to do their work even better. One of the areas, that's the second agenda topic, is to bring science into the clinic. And that's not new because you always are bringing science into the clinic. Researches are being done, trials being conducted, guidelines being constructed, but it is also a matter of time. And I will discuss that in that topic and also how we can actually help you on that. And then I want to talk about a term which I like a lot, augmented intelligence or interactive augmented intelligence. And that is on a different sides that AI, artificial intelligence, can help you with big time. So to put it nice, to put it very clearly, yes, I am talking in my role in Roche and GE. And yes, I will also talk about products that we already have on the market or bringing into the market, but I don't want to sell it. I really want to talk about the ideas behind it and trigger your thinking around that. So that is the agenda for today. So first, shortly about Roche and GE. Well, we are both parties in a market which are present in the healthcare for more than 100 years each. And I'm not talking about Roche Pharma so much now, because yes, that is also a very big part of our company, but Roche Diagnostics, that's the part where I am working, the part of business from Roche. And so we focus a lot on lab testing. So you can think about clinical measures like blood values, urine testing, but also pathology testing. So the analysis of images for samples of biopsies. We call it in vitro, so that's the term that you see there. So that's all tissue taken, blood taken in vitro and then being analyzed. And then we partnered up with GE Healthcare about 3-4 years ago. They also have a very strong heritage. They are present in this area for a long time as well. And you might know them primarily maybe from the patient imaging business, so a CT scan or MRI scan, all kind of radiologist scans. And that's called in vivo because they're not taking some tissue from the human body to analyze that, but you go into the machines and they analyze you just like that. And the same goes for monitoring solutions in more the ICUs, so the intensive care units. And we found each other in the third term, so that's called in silico. That means, well, the zeros and the ones, the data. So data science, that's doing much more with the data that we gather over all those areas and bringing them together, which will deliver other types of value. And our shared vision is on top. What we're really aiming for both is to make patient care more precise for every clinician and also more personalized for every patient. And this is only a very short part on products. So Roche is really focusing a lot on oncology. And you will see a bit in this presentation about NAVIFY Tumor Board. NAVIFY Tumor Board enables physicians to work together as a team and work around treating oncology and discussing oncology patient cases to determine the best treatments. And GE Healthcare is focusing a lot there on acute care, as I said, on the ICU, and that's a software product that we also developed together with them, coming mostly from GE, and we help them. So that's the other way around. With the virtual collaborator, which is aiming at fast responses on deteriorating patient conditions. So I want to start this presentation by bringing up this guy. You might know him. This is Sean, and Sean is a doctor in the television series The Good Doctor. And sometimes I love the series, sometimes I hate it. And the nice thing is this doctor really brings a lot of science. He knows, he is a walking encyclopedia. So he has an autistic disorder, and he remembers so many things from scientific articles and from all kinds of researches, and he brings that into a hospital. And sometimes you can get really jealous on that because he knows so many things. And then he also sees things that his colleague doctors do not see. And he thinks of possible diagnoses that the other doctors do not think about. So what he does, he combines what he sees with what he knows, which is both a lot, and that brings on completely new suggestions for possible diagnosis. And then you get this type of terms, and I'm not discussing the term, but this is every sequel, there's a new term that's introduced and tells about, well, mostly very specific rare diseases that happen not often, obviously. But then he thinks, hey, actually, we should really look into this and do more diagnosis. Sometimes it's irritating, but actually, if you think about it, I think that many doctors would like to be like him, as smart as he is. That brings me to the lineup of this presentation. So this is about where we are in 2020. Over time, and that's over several decades, maybe even longer, I think, we see that the deeper we get into understanding, the more complex things get. And you see that on several areas. So on the left side, you see the diseases, where a couple of decades back, we were saying, okay, a patient appears to have a breast tumor. Okay, the guidelines say we should do this. We should treat her with this chemotherapy, for example. And then what happened is that after some time, sometimes it appeared that this medication did not work for that particular patient. And then another medication was tried. And I'm on purposely using that word try. Because the thing is, nowadays we know more and more about the disease mechanisms. So not only medicine will work, but maybe first doing surgery is much better. Or first doing radiotherapy is much better. And here the talk is about immunotherapy, for example, about the role of inflammation. So we understand more and more about the disease itself. And that makes the whole landscape more complex. So the more we understand, the more complex it gets. With that, also the diagnostic options have really grown massively. And I'm not going to discuss everything on the sheet, but I want to mention one other thing. We are very strong in the last years to look at the genes, at the genetic information. And knowing which specific genetic mutations a person has really determines well which medication or which treatment will succeed or will probably not succeed. Same goes for biomarkers. So also on that area, well, our insight grows. And also the number of treatment options is growing. And then the last one, the number of people that we are working with together as teams is growing also tremendously. So this is the complexity that we're facing nowadays. And also a picture that will apply to about every industry is that the data amount is growing really big time. One thing I want to point out here only is fitness trackers. If we would only be able to use that data, which is monitoring patients real time all the time, that would be really great to understand what is happening with a patient. This is an important one as well. This is about if you were a doctor educated in the 1950s, you would have gathered enough knowledge to serve your whole career with that knowledge about, or you could easily read up with the new knowledge appearing over the years, because the medical knowledge will only double every 50 years by then. Nowadays, well, the picture is quite clear. This is information, I think, that was gathered in 2019. They say every 73 days, the information or the medical knowledge is doubling. So the big question is, how can you keep up with that? They say that doctors should be reading 27 hours a day for all the medical information to get into their head. And then the big question is, reading 27 hours a day, you won't consume all that knowledge. Then also, if you look at clinical trials, to address the complexity of medicine, a lot of trials is being conducted. And the number of trials is growing as well. And here you see that only in oncology, and I'm looking here at a bit older graph, it goes up to 2017, but let's say about 3,500 to 4,000 new oncological trials are launched per year. So it's also, well, virtually impossible to keep track. And what we typically see is that a lot of doctors focus mostly on their own hospital and the trials that are run there, or on some hospitals in the area, but it's really impossible to look wider, where there might be very, very good applicable trials for your patients in other hospitals as well. So that's yet another one. And the last one that I want to mention here is the capability of the human brain. And I want to say that I really have deep respect for doctors. I think that they are very intelligent, more intelligent maybe than many others, but also for doctors, well, maybe they can process 6 variables parallel, so 6 different angles on a particular topic, but not 10 or 12. That's really impossible to really involve all different parameters, all different angles on a topic, on a patient case, to process them all in a good way. That is really impossible for human intelligence. So that's actually why we want to actually help the doctor. So this is the second topic, and that's on clinical decision support. We really think that a doctor could be helped big time by offering clinical decision support. And I just want to take you on a small journey here. So what you see often in clinical data in EMRs, or actually on paper, and this is intentionally made small so you cannot read it. It's not confidential, but that's not the topic. The thing is that often information is still written. And also, if it is in an EMR, in a hospital system, or in some report, it is often plain text. So that is good. But I just want to name you one example. When we applied our NAVIFY platform, when we implemented that in a hospital, we finally got a doctor saying, really, so now I don't need my handwritten notes anymore. That is a good remark, I think. That makes a lot of sense. And the big thing for that doctor was that she noticed for herself that actually each doctor took notes for him or herself only. And the other doctors, remember that we are working in a team now, more and more these days. The other doctors could hardly, they could not reuse that information. They did not see the notes, so how could they ever reuse it? So one thing that we can do is actually help with structuring the data and also coding the data. I will come back to the coding in a second, but structuring, it's really saying, okay, extract the most important pieces like staging of a tumor, like the TNM classification, tumor location, and so on. Extract it from the text. And then the coding, it will also help to make data exchangeable between hospitals. And as I said, I come back to that in a moment. Only the structuring will already help big time to search effectively in scientific information. So typically we see three types of information that is often used already, I think, in clinical practice. So that is a set of trials. It might be your own hospital trials, but well, many doctors also look outside the walls of their own hospital. For sure, publications, it's a more generic base of articles. And guidelines, well, every hospital, every doctor, each doctor has to use guidelines, right? The thing is that all this information, also guidelines, is changing, well, in a very fast pace. For example, guidelines, I think that about 20 years ago, you would have a book like this thick laying on a desk, and people can just look it up in that book on what is the current guideline. So the magic is in the word current. What is current? Current is the guideline actually changes a couple of times per year now. So how can you keep track of the latest guidelines and apply them in your daily practice? And I just want to make a quick comparison with, for example, Google Maps and how we are using computer system in our daily lives, just as human beings. I mean, who is not using Google Maps or Apple Maps? I think most of us are. And the thing is that it does not only show you where an address is, it shows you also the route to go there. So make a small comparison with guidelines perhaps, but also it offers you information on traffic conditions and the estimated travel time. Just imagine before we had that combination of different angles, you should actually go to Google, to some CD actually, I remember that from my past, and look up the address. I have to find out the address myself and how to get there. And I should go to another website to find out what the traffic is and how much time I would expect to need to get there. The thing is that we can actually combine that information at your fingertips, as we call that often. So that is a type of information that you can actually draw into your clinical practice. Then another type of information that is really important, and that comes back to the coding, it's the real world data. Why does it come back to the coding? Well, as you see here, in this example, we have compared two different possible treatments that could be applicable for the patient that we are discussing in this tumor board that we are talking about here in oncology. So lumpectomy or a whole breast radiation therapy, or that's actually combined, versus adjuvant endocrine therapy. If you want to be able to compare this not only within your own hospital, but also with patients from other hospitals, you have to have a proper coding of that lumpectomy plus whole breast radiation therapy, because the one hospital will spell that differently than the other. And that's not only about language, it's also within countries, I can assure you. But if we can code this, we can actually compare to the so-called digital twin of the current patient that we are discussing. And for example, what you see here in the graph very shortly, you see the green, that's the lumpectomy and the whole breast radiation. And the red one, that's the adjuvant endocrine therapy. What it says is, it's an OS, so an overall survival rate. And it starts with 100%, and then that's the y-axis, 0 to 100. And the overall survival goes down over time, right? And then you see over the month, that's the x-axis, how fast actually, on average, a person gets to a certain probability of being still alive. And here you see that actually the green one offers better, better options for the patient apparently than the red one. So if you have that information, you want to bring that at hand to the doctor, and the doctor still has to really assess the data. That's our, we are really strongly convinced that that is necessary. And the doctor will turn it into actionable insights and offer well, the doctor's opinion combined with this data to the tumor board discussion and discuss it with their fellow colleagues, with the other specialists. And then typically the tumor board will make a decision, and that decision, well, decision is often actually, well, we propose to do either that or that treatment. That will be offered to the patient, and then with the patient it will be discussed, maybe using this graph, for example, on, so dear patient, would you really like to go to live as long as possible, even though the treatment can be really hurtful? Or would you rather have a better quality of life, but maybe live a bit shorter? I mean, those are harsh choices, but this is it's not an easy task to be a doctor and to be a patient as well, for sure. It is hard. But these decisions, they should also very well be made by a patient, well informed by the doctor, supported by data. So we have actually this application, and I just want to show you very quickly what it looks like. This is called NAVIFY Tumor Board. It's a cloud-based product. We are supporting the whole tumor board process. So that's from preparation to the discussion, to the next steps, and then also the discussion with the patient. We can support it as well. And on the right-hand side, you see the two bigger clinical decision support options at this moment. Those are the clinical trial match app and the publication search app. And I just want to dive into this clinical trial match app a bit deeper. So first, this is the generic overview that we offer. So this whole presentation is called not only for CDS, but also why will dashboards actually help? Well, what we encounter very often with our customers is that they say, we just see all the different types of information in all types of different places, but we really want to bring it together in a focused area, focusing on a certain disease. So we are focusing on cancer, as you see. I already mentioned TNM. So for example, you see here, it's called stage, clinical and pathology TNM, that says the tumor is bigger or smaller. It has actually gone to certain lymph nodes, that's the N, and then the M stands for metastasis. So in this case, fortunately, the tumor has not spread out over the body. And then from that score, a stage follows. So stage 2, it's quite well treatable most often. Also, you see here on the right-hand side, genomics. Genomics are on the DNA. So on the DNA, we have detected certain alterations. And on the bottom, you see biomarkers, which are typically in this case for breast cancer. So HER2, for example, that's a very important one, ER as well. And what happens is that when we have this information together in this dashboard, we will use this in our clinical trial match. And it looks like this. So we are just looking at exactly the same patient here, but we went to an application. And the app actually says here, okay, so I'm showing enrolling trials, which are specific for ductal breast carcinoma. So it's not for prostate or colon, it's really specific for stage 2 patients. And also, it takes into account the age of the patient. And in this case, we are looking at the United States as the area. But you see here on the right-hand side, you can actually change that. You can change the filtering. Also, you see here 2 suggestions, which are actually powered by an external company, Molecular Match. Because we don't want to offer only clinical trials which could be sponsored by Roche. We want to offer trials sponsored by any company, by Novartis, by other competitors. So it's really neutral. Only then it will actually work for you. If you click on that, I don't have a screen on that yet, but it will actually explain also why the clinical decision support came with this specific suggestion. And you can, as being a doctor, determine, does it really make sense, or I actually doubt it, and I don't agree with the mechanism, with the algorithm. I would rather choose another thing. So the big thing here is really that we, just like Google Maps, we are bringing together a different angle on the patient case directly in the dashboard of the doctor. And we are using this unbiased results, as I just explained. so independent of sponsorship. And yeah, as I said, we can actually look at locations. So you don't want to let a patient travel too far if not necessary. So this is just really getting that external information at your fingertips in the clinic. So far for the tumor board and clinical decision support, bringing science into the clinic. And now I want to step on to the next topic, and that is the more acute diseases. So as you see, GE, together with Roche, has developed this application or different application, but this one particularly, to focus on how can we handle sepsis better. Sepsis, so that's blood poisoning. That's a #1 cause of death in hospitals, as it says. And if you are severely affected, a quite high percentage, a very high percentage of people die. Also, a very big issue there is that it really escalates very unpredictably and also sometimes very fast. And then also there's a money factor. And I don't want to ride on the waves of COVID too much, but you see there is some similarity, right? So also with COVID, actually, well, if you get COVID-19 and you end up in an ICU, then a large percentage actually will die from COVID-19. So that's a similarity which is well, pretty obvious, I think, and big also. And also another similarity is the unpredictability. So it's really unpredictable how fast a patient will deteriorate, and you have to act fast in that case. So that leads to this picture, and I'm going a bit to sepsis, but well, sometimes you will see an analogy with COVID-19. So the thing is, if you want to detect if somebody has a certain disease, in this case sepsis, there is a so-called noise floor you see here on the left-hand side. So that will mean that whatever type of detection possibilities you have, or sensors and so on, you will not see that somebody has it. Just with COVID, if you are infected as a person with the COVID virus, at first you won't notice at all. It has, I think, about 10 to 14 days time before it actually, well, before it appears, right? So, and all the time you carry it with you. So that is the noise floor. You cannot detect it yet. And then, well, it depends a bit on the type of disease, because here the next level is the ICU and then the ward. I think in COVID, it's just the other way around, because first you would end up on the ward. You go to the hospital with some symptoms in case of COVID, and you will be submitted there, monitored, and you see that actually there are the symptoms, but you don't see all the symptoms. So maybe you see that the patient is coughing, but you don't know exactly if the patient had COVID, because the test has not been taken, or the result is not in yet. So it is detectable, but still undetected, and time goes on. And the same goes on the ICU. So if you are actually, well, COVID has been detected, let's put it as that, and you go to the ICU, then also it can really change rapidly. Your whole situation, your condition can change rapidly. But at first, the first signs you won't notice. And the big thing is that it's quite evident, the sooner you detect that the patient's condition is deteriorating, the better it is. And the later it is, the more heroic you have to act to really save the patient's lives. So it's just on top, it says it is not so much the fact that patients suddenly deteriorate, it's more that you suddenly notice that the patient's condition has deteriorated. So we have been looking here now on possible applications of AI to address this situation. And we see two big angles there. One is to apply AI for the patient. And that is really on applying AI on the differential detection. That means, as it says here, really combine data from in vivo and in vitro, and perhaps also with new sensors, to find patterns and to signal earlier to the doctor, hey, this patient actually is possibly deteriorating now, so please take a look now. I will go through this utilizing waveform in the next slide. So I will come back to that. So that's also, it's about predicting. So being earlier in your detection and predicting possible issues. And then a whole different thing is two things. So for the clinician, it is much more focused on two items. So one is, it's the first line here, view all the patients in your care at the same time in real time. So what we have been seeing also in COVID, to make that comparison again, is that quite a couple of hospitals have created a dashboard now all at a sudden to really monitor a specific patient group closely and directly, real time, to keep track of the condition of a group of patients and to know, hey, how is this whole patient group evolving? What should we do with our ICU? Should we have more beds now, or maybe in a week, or and so on? But also it will signal the doctors directly, hey, this patient condition doesn't look good now. We really should take action now. So that is about the real-time dashboarding that was also in the title of this presentation at first. The second thing, and that was quite new to me, was this asking for so the interfacing between the data and the clinician. And you will see in a moment what I mean with that. But in general, it says, okay, we want to enable voice-controlled interfacing with systems to deliver the data in a summarized way to the doctor, so you are not overloaded with lots of documents, as you often will see in EMRs, but you get summaries of data. And also the AI will try to understand, if you ask a question to the AI system, it will try to understand, so why do you ask this? And if it's not sure, it will ask you check questions to know for sure or to know better. And then it will actually give back information in the context of your question. And for me, that was a whole new way of looking at it, and I really like it very much. I have a video on this in a moment also to demonstrate how that works. And I just want to make a comparison with two things. You see them here. I mean, on the right-hand side, that's the keyboard, right? And the mouse. And nowadays, that is the standard mechanism that we all use. I'm also using it now to interact with my computer. But I just want to make a comparison with that strange thing on the left top. Well, some of you will know what it is, but if I show it to my youngest kid, I mean, he's 20, he might still know it, but to the kids of my sister, they won't know it. This is a telephone, people, but I mean, it's an old mechanism that we used then, which was good then, no problems, but we did much better now. And now we can just ask Siri to call somebody for us, right? And I'm a strong believer in that will happen also in hospitals. I'm just thinking about many doctors are not using keyboards anymore to write down the reports on their diagnosis and the studies that they take on pathology, radiology. They just have not a voice-controlled virtual assistant, but they can use speech. Speech is so much faster to work with than the keyboard. And it also is not like a computer screen between you and a patient. So that is just one remark on that interfacing. So I said I want to go back a bit on this waveform analysis. If you look at this picture, you see three whole different things. You see an electrocardiogram, so a heart movie. You see a photo of a biopsy, so that is a pathology sample. And on the bottom, you see a completely different thing, that's a lung test. And what you typically see is, okay, there's a picture, that's good. And somebody is actually analyzing it and saying, okay, for the heart picture, the heart movie, the heart rate is 85. And here, for example, in the pathology, we see that platelets is 450. This is not pathology, it's hematopathology, it's blood pathology then. So it says we have platelets 450,000. And here with a lung test, you see a respiration rate of 14. And typically those numbers end up in a lab system and or in an EMR. But on the right column, you see what we actually could detect if we would dive more into the pictures itself. And I'm not saying that the doctors should do all that, because it's a lot of work if doctors need to do it. But good examples exist, for example, for an ECG, that algorithms can detect quickly if there's actually a chance of a sudden heart attack. They can see that in a picture faster and sometimes also better than doctors. So if we would let computers and algorithms support this very much in, okay, not only depending on the lab data, those numbers there, or the EMR data, but also going back to the pictures, that will give us new insights actually that can help in well, preventing sudden deterioration and also in other areas actually. So what we really envision is this, this digital platform, and the term I used before, augmented intelligence. And the term augmented, you might remember this Google Glasses that had been out some time ago, that actually is augmenting reality with extra information which was projected on your eye. Well, that's the same thing that we also envision. We think that a doctor will be helped tremendously by adding this information from science, from real-world data, from new sensors, from analysis from the artificial intelligence that will actually utilize activate data, it says here, but it also will liberate clinicians because you do not have to do all the work yourself. And also an analogy with the guy that I mentioned before, this Sean, this good doctor. Good doctor was irritating, but what is the good thing about irritating? It helps critical thinking. So this good doctor always brought in a new approach, a new way of looking at the patient case, which made the other colleagues think, oh, wait a minute, well, actually he could have a point. And that is also very important to get to the best possible diagnosis. So this is the bigger picture of what is also called a digital twin. I used that term before. And on the right-hand side, you see virtual collaborator. So I just want to point out a couple of things here. On the left-hand side, you see the patient who is in the ICU or in the ward or maybe at home, right? If you have these wearable devices, the trackers, you can actually monitor a patient on distance. ECGs are also sometimes taken by your smartwatch, to name one example. So more and more sensors are getting on the market and getting available to monitor somebody's condition, all kind of specific items. But also one example, for these novel sensors is that you sometimes now see that a camera is monitoring a patient lying in his or her bed and detecting things that, well, a normal sensor can hardly detect. For example, if you have a tube in your nose or in your throat for breathing, like with COVID, I mean, sometimes people get restless and try to get it out, and sometimes it gets out. Well, maybe this is a bad example because maybe a sensor will notice that, but that kind of changes. A camera can actually notice that in live video and then create an alert and directly put it on this dashboard that I talked about before. Then on the digital twin idea, the digital twin is really about looking for patients like this one. Other patients in the same hospital, in other hospitals, which have a similar set of attributes, that's a technical term, let's say the same age, condition, staging, or in acute care, it's much more about blood values and a pattern in the blood values over time. And what happened with that set of patients, so like maybe 80% actually developed sepsis very fast and 20 not so fast or not at all. So if you make that kind of comparisons over time, you can actually make good predictions of what could happen with this patient. What is the chance that this patient will deteriorate? And to do that, we really need a lot of algorithms algorithm, that's a term for artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep machine learning, and so on. So that's really on analyzing data sets to apply them finally in real life. And then on the right-hand side, you see that the virtual collaborator is able to get the data together and put it in a smaller, easily to consume dashboard for a doctor. So not again the long lists of documents, but only a small summary. That is what AI is good at. AI may not be able to understand medical information, but it can summarize it. And then that's the arrow to the right, user presentation to the doctor. But then to the left, that's just what I said. The doctor can actually ask the virtual collaborator on, I want to know this and this from this patient, and also inform me when this happens, please. So the best way of showing that is with a movie, and I will play that now. It's only 3 minutes, but it gives a very good impression. There we go.
When clinicians are looking for data on patients, they get stuff like this. But what they want to know is, does she have an infection? Is her blood pressure dropping? Is her lactic acid increasing? Meet the virtual collaborator in development by GE and Roche. We are designing an intelligent digital teammate that frees clinicians to do what they want and need to do. Whether you're starting your shift, on shift, or at a handoff time, it's designed to provide you with a continuous clinical picture of each patient, and it's been with each patient since admittance. The Summary tab thoughtfully organizes relevant clinical information into a simple, easy-to-follow display without further data diving across multiple files or computer screens. The virtual collaborator is designed to notify you of patient status changes, helping you keep pace with the patient's changing condition. This view of vitals and trends can contribute to your awareness of patient deterioration. Set custom notifications so you can review any change in your patient's status. Ask the virtual collaborator what you need in order to care for your patients using voice or text. Its natural language processing is designed to provide unique conversational access to the information you're looking for. It understands your requests and presents the data in a meaningful and clinically relevant way. The virtual collaborator is an intelligent team member who gets you and participates in the care conversation. Sepsis bundle. You can ask for additional clinical data as if you're asking a fellow team member. For example, ERCP report. The virtual collaborator can enhance clinical team collaboration. It hosts collaborative conversation about each patient. Hi, Dr. Pat. I'm also concerned about Mr. McGregor. Will you be able to stop by and see him soon? This can enhance the collective clinical awareness of the entire team, providing the entire team with the same information in context at the same time. It's designed to keep the entire team fully informed and engaged around a specific patient. The virtual collaborator helps clinicians be more present for their patients, while enhancing team collaboration and collective clinical awareness. It frees clinicians to do what they want and need to do. The virtual collaborator in development by GE and Roche.
So to wrap that up, as you saw, it really eliminates the patient. So it really shows the condensed information about each patient's condition, and it will signal when the patient is deteriorating. Also, it uses this natural language processing. I have not used this term earlier in my presentation, but it came also back in the video. That's also a part of smart algorithms. And actually, I think it was one of the very first algorithms that is broadly used. And then also finally, it will, as it finally said also, it will enable you to collaborate with your team faster, easier, because it's voice controlled, but you can also collaborate easy and ask other people to do something for you or work with you. So the big thing is on top here, it really integrates the data together with human intuition. So that is on the virtual collaborator. And then just to wrap this up, this is my takeaway message. So if you, I just want to ask you to remember those 3 things to take with you. So the main topic is this interactive augmented intelligence. It really will enhance your capabilities as being a doctor. What will it do for you? It will filter information. So not offer you 100,000 or 50,000 different clinical trials, but it will filter it down to the applicable patient case. really do that in a smart way also. I didn't go into all the details, but that it does. It filters and it will suggest like, these are the most applicable studies for you. It will also uncover more information than you will get normally from all kind of images. And it will also present that findings to you. And finally, it will interface naturally. That's the natural language processing part that was discussed just before. And what will that actually yield into? It will enable doctors to have more time available also to focus even more on their patients than they are doing now. So that wraps up my presentation. That is the takeaway. And this is what we are doing as Roche and GE Healthcare, doing now what patients need next. So I would like to open up the floor for questions or remarks.
All right. Thank you, Martin, for the wonderful presentation. And we do have questions flowing in already. The first question coming in is from Ms. April Armitage. Her question is, hi, just wondering if you are working with any EHR vendors on virtual collaborator system and any expected release timelines. And
yeah, so the last one is always interesting. I know that we are working with one of our customers who is using Cerner. And yeah, we will actually be able to use data from the EMR, that is for sure. Another interesting question there is if you can actually bring information back into the EMR also, or use virtual collaborator from within the EMR. I'm not completely sure where that goes right now, but we just have started that. You might have seen it in the video. It is not commercially available yet. So that means we just launched it in America in February, if I'm correct, January or February. And we are working with the first hospitals to implement it. So the timelines are unknown for sure, but collaboration is essential because we need to attach to the data in various systems, and EMRs are often a gathering point of lots of information. I hope that makes sense, Mrs. April.
Okay, I'm going to unmute one of the participants. I have seen you raising your hand. So Hussein, would you like to introduce yourself and feel free to voice out your question?
Hussein, you can talk if you want. So if that doesn't work, he also asked a question in the chat, right? So I see it's about a similar question as the question from April. Mm-hmm. It's about, can the virtual collaborator be integrated into another system? And I think really at this moment, I can only give this general answer. Yes, it has to be integrated in some way. It's not a standalone system for sure. We need to be integrating with data. That is one major thing. And also, if you think about all the real-time information, we should not only integrate with GE devices, but also with devices from other vendors to get that information in directly. So that's even going beyond the EMR to maybe answer your question better, Hussein.
Okay, we're waiting for more questions to come in. Allow me to ask a couple of questions then. The first question from me is it safe enough to let computers make analysis on human diseases?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I have been also involved in a ethics committee on using AI systems, and healthcare is a special space. Because yeah, it's about humans, it's about human life. So you want to be very careful applying software to that. I just want to mention one thing in parallel. We are using software in so many other areas in our lives. So if I were to build a bridge, I cannot do the calculations right, but that's just me. But also I would be much more confident now if a computer has done calculations on the structure and the needed materials to build a bridge properly, right? So just for an example, that I think that really the data analysis by a computer algorithm can really help. But more precise, I mean, that's just a thought that I have, but more precise, research really shows that more and more algorithms appear to really outperform doctors in precision when they are analyzing images and also in other pattern-based analysis. I have an example there, actually. There's a Nick Bryan, who is a medical doctor, a professor and the chair of a department of diagnostic medicine at the University of Texas. And he predicts that within 10 years, no medical imaging study will be reviewed by a radiologist until it has been pre-analyzed by a machine. And well, if you keep in mind that these algorithms are very specific and narrow in what they can analyze, so we have to be very careful to use them only for the purpose that they have been designed for. That's also part of the answer, I think, to that question. That makes it safe. So not try to use an algorithm for a very specific area on a very broad area, because then it will fail probably. But if we do that properly, they can really help big time and assist the doctor. So yeah, and also the safety, it's a lot about quality. So the quality of the outcomes of these algorithms are constantly assessed while we are developing those algorithms over time, applying AI and machine learning. And one last thing that also comes from this ethics committee, it's that I think that the safety also comes from the needed collaboration between the machines and the humans, where the human really has to decide on what to do. On the same side, also taking into serious account what analysis and information has been delivered by machines. There's also a responsibility to do that. But finally, the safety really comes from the combination also.
Okay, and of course, this is a very interesting question, which it has been ongoing question actually. In your opinion, will artificial intelligence replace doctors in time? For instance, we all know Deep Blue, so it seems like machines can do the same or better than humans on the chess game. Recently, also on the game Go. So, in your opinion, would this also happen in the medical field?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one, and it is interesting. But the thing is, I mean, chess and Go, they have been played by computers now better than humans can play. And that is very disturbing maybe for some people. Mm-hmm. And I can imagine that very well. But the thing is, a game is just a game. A game is just a game. And healthcare is definitely far more complex than a game. And even it's far more complex than a quite complex game like Go is. Go is really complex at itself, but healthcare, it's much complexer. So what I mean is games can be completely modeled. So you can model the context, the environment, the rules, and the possible moves. You can define very precisely, these are the desired outcomes. You have to win. So the next move should actually deliver value, and the value is very precisely defined in a game. And therefore you can also program that all very well, or let the neural network work on that analysis of all the possible moves. The thing is that healthcare has a far more volatile and unpredictable context. So, for example, not by far anything everything can be detected by sensors, right? So computers can only come in by the information that is in systems. They cannot, I mean, they can analyze pictures, they can analyze videos, but you have to be able to detect it. And I don't want to tell too much that doctors have to go on their gut feeling, but actually sometimes they do, because the gut feeling often is an expression of bringing together quite a couple of angles of the doctor's mind and experience and all that. So having said that, if you are looking at some pattern intense professions like pathology or radiology, they are organized nowadays that radiologists often sit in this dark room and performing a very specific task of analyzing all those pictures all day long, or a large part of the day. And if you consider that analysis of pictures, that is exactly where machines could do a better job, and that's going on over time, and it's getting better and better. So Eric Topol is the writer of a couple of books on healthcare and IT. I really like him as a writer. He stated, for example, that if you want to avoid being displaced by or replaced by computers, radiologists must allow themselves to be replaced by computers. And what he actually says, you should actually embrace it and not fight it. So the same Nick Bryan that I just mentioned, he also said something like, we believe that machine learning and AI will enhance both the value and professional satisfaction of radiologists. Let me see. So yeah, he said, by allowing us to spend more time performing functions that add value and influence patient care, and less time doing boring tasks that we neither enjoy nor perform as well as machines. So the big thing is, he says, let the machines do that boring work, please, because we don't enjoy it. And in time, they will beat us at that. Let us do the more high quality work, because that is where we can really add value. So yeah, I think that it will make, using AI mechanisms and algorithms, it will make the work of physicians interesting, more interesting, and also make sure that they will avoid errors when they work together with the AI systems. And they can actually also spend more time because they get more time available. They can spend more time on doing their analysis and making their diagnosis, because that's also something that science really proves, that when doctors can spend more time with their patients and on analysis, they will yield a better diagnosis. So that's something that the doctor will be striving for, I think. That's a long answer, but this is something that touches my heart. Yeah.
Okay, and another question from April regards data ownership from NAVIFY platform, and in future, the virtual collaborator, will patients' data be anonymized and used as a RWE data set to support R&D and drug development in future?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a question that we always get, and I can understand it very well. The thing is that Roche also is a pharma company, right? So you could imagine that Roche is interested in the data, to put it like that, because that will help us for R&D, drug development indeed. So far, we only have contracts with our customers that are, well, they all will be very clear, but at this moment we are only, how do you say, we are maintaining the data for them, and we are not allowed, according to the contract at all, to touch or export the data for our own use. So what we really aim to do with NAVIFY and with Virtual Collaborator, I think it will be similar. I'm not completely aligned there yet, but I trust that it will be the same. We want to combine information from science, from the real world data, anonymized indeed. That's the good part about the question also that I like a lot. The only way that we could reuse the data should be anonymized. That's an important part. But actually we are using commonly available data mostly to bring that into the clinical use. And to do that, we need to have access in the system to the patient's data, to be able to link the characteristics of the patient to those scientific search engines. But that is the only technical approach that we have on using the data. And we don't envision that we want to export the data right now. I can imagine that that will be useful also for healthcare as a whole. In that case, we really will get into contact with our customers to discuss the pros and the cons and the boundaries. And we have to recontract with the customers also on in which conditions can we actually use, under which conditions could we actually use the data. I sometimes give an hour of presentation on security and privacy of data. So this is only a short answer, but the bottom line is no, we don't use it like that at this moment. And if we would do it, the customers will be involved and have their say. And more than their say, they have to have their veto, actually. That's the better way of putting it.
I see. So if I'm following your answers correctly, it seems like what we have been reading and also what we have been watching in the sci-fi movies and reading on sci-fi novels, Well, at the moment still remain the sci-fi world, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that the sci-fi world is now. Yeah, and I just mentioned Eric Topol, and he really is inspiring me also a lot. I read a book about deep medicine. That's the most recent book he wrote last year, August or so, or July. Deep medicine, and that's really about, it says, how artificial intelligence can make healthcare human again. Well, that's a bit bold statement, but that's why it's a book. But it will bring more humanity back into healthcare, and I really like this book, so I can recommend it to you if you want to read something on this. It really describes a lot on how AI already is progressing over the last couple of years, very much. It underlines quite a couple of things I said, but it will also show you the picture of the future and the near future, I can say.
Wow. Looks like machine is catching up on us humans. And thank you very much, Martin, for this fascinating presentation. And I mean, I can see coming in from the questions asked and interactions that we have for this past 1 hour. It has been really amazing, and also taking time off your busy schedule, everyone, to join us today. So once again, we would like to thank Martin today. So
Happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
You too. And so if you have further questions, do feel free to write in, and we will redirect them to Martin, if that's okay with you.
Please do. Yes. Open to that.
All right. So do stay safe, and we look forward to hosting you again.
Okay. And everybody, thanks for listening in and asking questions. I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Thanks, Martin, also from my side.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, have a good day.
You too.
Thank you, and let's stay in touch, of course. Eh?
Great. Everyone have a great weekend.
Perfect for everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.